10:01, so I think we can officially join and people will trickle in. Just for format, we'll get started here, have an amazing conversation with Elizabeth, who I'll introduce in a moment, then go into some of the data that will support a lot of the things that we'll be chatting about, and then open it up for Q&A at the end. So thanks for joining us. This is going to be a power 30-minute chat with one of my very, very favorite people. So welcome, Elizabeth Faraut. She is the founder and creative director for for LALOOP. I already went to the impact for LALOOP, which is an incredible first to market accessory that she created. You may have seen them. Elizabeth, are you wearing yours? All right. Okay, so showing us how it works in real time, she identified a market need that folks just didn't have a place to put their glasses, constantly losing them, and also sort of anything that existed was not chic or easy to wear. And she thought about it, invented it, found the people to create it, and here we are. How many years in?
22.
22 years in to this incredible product. And along the way, she was able to weave her love of community and giving back and service into the brand in a really, really powerful way, which makes her the perfect person to have a conversation with as we talk about how women are really unique in the way that we drive impact in business and in life. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us for this power chat. I'd love to just start at the very beginning, which is, okay, it's 22 and a half years ago. You were living in New York, had this vision. Why did you jump in and create this brand, and just kind of walk us into that moment?
It was about having spent many years working for people who were entrepreneurial and being inspired by them. And so when this idea came about, the seed was planted in me. And at the time I had a 1-year-old daughter, and recognized that the life and the work I was living, working for another company and being on the road 3 weeks a month, was not tenable. And I knew that I had to create a different work environment for myself. I didn't know what that was going to look like. And I saw this as an opportunity to, one, that there was a need in the market for this product, and two, that I had the hunger to see what I could do with this idea. And at the beginning, it was really, a series of meeting people who, from the jeweler on 47th Street in New York City, who, partnered with us to create a prototype, to the retailer on Madison Avenue who partnered with us and believed that, this was going to work in a store, to buy a dozen, to the editor at the New York Times style section, who was another mom at my daughter's nursery school, who said, you know what, this is a great idea. Give me a few and I'll see if I can, get it into the newspaper. And with those 3 people believing in me and giving me a chance, a product was born, a company was born, and we were off and running. And that was the beginning.
And I know, we're going to talk a little bit about how women drive impact differently. You already touched on this a little bit, but you have such a relationship-driven business. And I'm wondering if you can just speak to, as a founder leader and also as a woman, you understood sort of innately the importance of these relationships and how you've thought about these relationships as an asset as you've built.
You hit on it, Emily. To me, everything is about relationships, whether it's with the Italian leather supplier that I was speaking to this morning about the new leathers that we want to launch in the fall, or with that first retailer on Madison Avenue who, I was just sharing about my 1 to 2-year-old daughter and what it was like to bring her to nursery school in New York City, having just moved from Los Angeles, to, really connecting with people and hearing what was going on in their lives and what was going on in my lives. And oh yes, I happen to have this product, but weaving it into a conversation about what was going on in our lives was really the foundation of the conversation.
Amazing. So, when you started this, brand in the aughts, folks really weren't thinking about how to drive impact and community-based work through business. It didn't like not exist, but it wasn't kind of in the zeitgeist, obviously, in the way that it is now. So I would love for you to just bring us into how you were driving impact during that time up until more recently, in a secondary vertical in your personal life, to kind of get us to, what we all know becomes Loop-In.
So what I noticed, what was happening is so we sell our products mostly to small business owners around the world. Typically it's the optical store that's selling nice eyeglasses, and then they carry LALOOPs next to the nice eyeglasses. And so the customer that walks in and wants to, purchase sunglasses or eyeglasses, recognizes that they don't want to lose their glasses, and the LALOOP is the best, most stylish insurance policy for those glasses. And in working with all of these store buyers and owners around the world, I found myself over the years sharing what I was doing, helping out in my community in Los Angeles in the nonprofit space, which was really important to me, but on the side. I always saw it as something that was not connected to LALOOP, but something that I did as a second job. And as I realized over many years, what was happening is people would come to me and say, oh, I have a cousin who lives in Los Angeles who's looking to give back. Elizabeth, I know you know a lot about that. What are some great nonprofits in Los Angeles? Or I run a store, in Houston, and I'm expanding in Dallas, and I really want to build some kind of give back program for my stores in Houston and Dallas. What do you recommend in terms of, a way for my team in my store to give back? And I found myself advising, just because, my partners knew that this was something that I did. And so they asked me for advice. And the more I did it, the more I realized that there was an opportunity for us at LALOOP to be able to weave this in, which we were already doing anyway, because I was at trade shows selling to stores and talking about it anyway, but I wanted to formalize it so that our retail partners could feel like they were a part of a give back movement that we were already doing.
Now, just, because we'll be sharing this, and I know there'll be a lot of people asking themselves this question, did you have any hesitations? Were you nervous about anything before you made that weave? What were things that you wanted to make sure you got right, as you were thinking about like sticking the landing on that coupling of the concepts?
Yeah, it's a great question. I worked for bigger companies before I started LALOOP, and one thing I was sure I did not want to do is have a model where, it was just about October and having a certain percentage of sales going to a certain charity because it was October, breast cancer research. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but I was looking for something, a program for impact that was beyond just the month of October, and that involved my team, behind the scenes in my office in Los Angeles, to our sales reps on the road around the world, to our suppliers, and to our customers, both B2B and D2C, direct to consumer and business to business. And so I wanted something that was more 360, that involved everyone that touched our products, not just a a percentage of sales type of campaign.
Amazing. So incredibly, thorough was the name of the game. And then just walk us through Loopin and what became of this concept.
So Loopin hit and was conceived right before the pandemic. And the idea originally was to create volunteer opportunities, in-person volunteer opportunities. COVID hit, that obviously was not possible. And so over the pandemic, what Loopin became, it was really interesting, because as the world stopped, Loopin, it was like there was this spotlight on LALOOP, an incredible opportunity for us at LALOOP to engage with our retailers and share what we were doing during this very devastating time for so many. And locally in Los Angeles, what we were doing is we were connecting to nonprofits who needed, who needed groceries for foster children who were just couldn't, pay for groceries. We did a lot of outreach. We, helped hospitals get access to PPE. We, and the initiatives were really local. And what I found as we started, I reached out to, I remember one conversation with a store we sell to in Anchorage. And we did a number of interviews that I would have, in one particular with this store owner from Anchorage, Alaska. And I was sharing what we were doing, giving back in Los Angeles during the pandemic. And I think this was around July of 2020. And she was sharing that she was volunteering because she, her store was closed and she had to do something. She couldn't just sit at home. And what she was doing in Anchorage, Alaska, and talking about the impact she was having. And it was this incredible bonding moment, not over product or selling, but over, as two business owners, what we were doing to give back in our community. And, flash forward now that her store's open, that the pandemic is, I guess safely say, quasi behind us. We have more of a bond because we, had this conversation, this realization that as business owners, we both care about community, we both give back, and we both want to spend the time to talk about it with our customers, with our, the people on our team, and that it's a true value and, part of our DNA that we share.
And have you, whether you've talked about it with her or recognized this with other conversations, do you feel like there is something unique about being a women-led organization that does infuse this into the DNA of a company or of a culture in a different way?
I do. I mean, I think you're right. Emily, I think you opened up with this, that it's very au courant, it's like people are doing this now, that, it adds value to your brand if this is part of your mission statement. I think that the consumer is very smart and knows when it's truly part of your DNA and when you just do it to check a box. And I mean, I, as a consumer, can feel that. And I know that intuitively. And, I believe that doing it authentically is unique. I think that it's something that you have to make a priority in your marketing, in your selling, in your manufacturing, sort of in all parts of your business. It's not just part of marketing. I think a lot of companies sort of put it in the marketing bucket, but don't realize that it needs to be part of the conversation with suppliers and with a sales force and in design and sort of all facets of your business.
Yeah. And, I'm not a neurologist or a scientist at all, but I think, and we'll get into some of the data, one of the things that is a unique marker of the way that most women experience the world is that multifaceted vantage point at all times. Like we're constantly looking at a puzzle in a multidimensional way. And that's sort of a proven fact in neuro. And I do think it's like that accordioning out of, okay, this can't just live here. This has to live in supply chain. It has to live in product. It has to live in marketing. And of course, if we aren't practicing what we preach, then it's not working at all. So then it has to work in, community relations or philanthropy or sort of whatever your business does in the outreach work. Incredible example of that sort of thorough, multifaceted, multi-layered piece. One last question, and then we will go into some of the data. Do you feel like this matters? I mean, again, for the people watching at home, you believe in impact and you're going to do this, whether it's a bottom line value or not, because it's core to who you are and who the business is. Beyond making you feel good, I'm wondering if you can just give us like one or two examples of why you think this has been also good for business in an additive way, if there are people kind of weighing whether it's time to jump into impact or not.
Yeah, I come to a couple examples, but I could sit here for all day sharing the examples because I do see it over and over and over again. But when I'm interviewing for new members of our team and talking about the work that we do, every single time, every single interview, 100% of the time, people say to me, you know what, Elizabeth, the fact that this is embedded in your business makes a difference. I'm interviewing with 3 other companies, and the fact that LALOOP, this is part of their DNA. I understand that you make this, a priority in your in the way you operate. I want to work for a company that operates that way. So I would say in terms of hiring, it's made a real difference. I would say also in selling, it's made a tremendous difference. Business is challenging, and supply chain issues, cost of goods, things are more expensive. Convincing that customer to part with their dollars, we have to work a lot harder today than ever before. And being able to, present products in a way where, I hear the customer's response being like, you guys do so much good for your community. It's just such a pleasure to be buying from you. And coming off of a weekend of selling, last weekend, we were in New York at a trade show, meeting with stores from all over the country in Canada who are buying products, and they have a choice, of which products to buy. And what I heard over and over and over again over the weekend is, it's such a pleasure to do business with you. You're doing so much good. It matters to the buyer. It matters it's a feel-good moment for sure. But I understand it because I, as a consumer, as I mentioned before, I feel the same way. You get to make a choice with whom you work.
Amazing. Well, as you and I sort of sat down and talked through this concept of women-led businesses making a difference, we know it in our bones. We see it every day. You lead a business that's making a difference. Certainly we at Ethos lead a business that's making a difference. I did want to go into the data and say, like, is there anything to prove this out? And so I did want to share a handful of slides, and then we'll open it up to questions. And really sort of this core question around authenticity and layering, right? We're going to dig into a few examples of how, just for the way that women leaders are wired, that's coming to pass in a not surprising way given the data. So first up, this question, like, are women more inherently altruistic? And I sort of cringe when we pose the question kind of internally. It's like, oh, that feels so squishy. But the data is very, very clear. At virtually all income levels, women are more likely to give to 501c3s. And not only are they looking to donate, but they're looking to make an impact. So they're really identifying goal-directed, impact directed plays, not just, oh, I feel better when I write a check and then that the work is done. For women that have access to wealth and who are in sort of that upper percentile, they say that having wealth, that giving charitably is one of the most satisfying aspects of having wealth. So if somebody asks you a question of like, okay, you're very blessed, what's one of the best things about being blessed? One of the very first responses from women in this category are that I get to give back. And that is a uniquely female response. And I thought that was interesting. And then, there are all these studies around, personality traits, and women typically do score higher on empathy and, leading with empathy, listening to people. And I do think, and just this sort of, proof point of everything that you just said, when you're in deep relation with people in your community, when you get to know them, when you hear their lives, when you hear, their joys and their struggles, and that really lands with you, I think you're more likely to want to do something about it, right? So it's really that receiving, those receptors of being able to listen, I think, that are, one of the reasons that women do scale more altruistic. Anything to say on this slide, and we can keep rolling as well.
I mean, I think you hit so many great points. The only piece I would add is, I think on the happiness, there's been so much research done on the, sort of how to find happiness. I think the data also proves that a purpose-driven life leads to a happier life. So for whatever that's worth, I would add a fifth bullet under there.
100%. It all starts with you, right? If you're feeling rooted, it's a much easier place to be giving from. So, the next slide sort of takes us into how women business leaders often identify that one of the reasons they founded their business was to make a positive impact. That may be, triple bottom line, B Corp kind of, business, or it may be, hey, I saw a local need. I wanted to create a product that benefited the world. I wanted to provide jobs in my local community. And that women, do look at that external value that's being created from the business at a higher clip, which is interesting. The next one, I think I've seen the way that you've led through the pandemic, and certainly the way that so many female leaders, from small business owners all the way to Fortune 500 companies, have led. Caring for employees is a hallmark, and we'll provide these slides after the presentation, and they have citations and other things. But just to rattle them off, when there are female leaders at the helm, there is greater access to higher quality health insurance, stronger policies to address workplace harassment and to create positive culture, having better access to parental leave, and even on-site childcare happens at a more regular clip with women leaders. And also just sort of a general climate of flexibility and balance. So thinking about kind of those multi-layered authenticity pieces that you discussed before, if you have the most amazing company that treats the world beautifully and everyone externally thinks that you're lovely, but then you open your doors and people come into your company and are miserable, that's a disconnect, and that doesn't lend to authentic impact in a long form way, because you have to have the people internally who are helping to bring that value and help live that work. So this, I think, is just a really important one. And for people thinking about impact, it's also really helpful to remember it's not just about making money, making financial donations to nonprofits in your community. It's how you treat your people at home and so many other components. Just in the interest of time, I want to roll to the next one. This then extends to mentorship, inspiring growth. There's all sorts of statistics, and again, we'll provide these after, that women place a greater importance on laddering talent internally and providing talent training for teams internally, and just seeing that as a value and as an important component of the purpose of their work. We'll do the next one. This is one, Elizabeth, again, the stats show that when women lead, those businesses have stronger diversity marks across every component, gender, veterans, race, ethnicity, religion. One of the things that you and I chatted about was, as you make decisions on the creative director side and thinking about imagery and the way that you position the brand, I'm wondering if you can just speak to an example that we were discussing.
Yeah, this has been very important to me from the beginning, and I think it really is just rooted in a philosophy of inclusion and making sure that in our marketing and how we operate, we're coming from a place of welcoming and including all of our constituents. And I think that it's something that as a business owner, as a business leader, as a creative director, it's really important to be intentional about that, because it's very easy to get pigeonholed and to pick photos because they're beautiful and to do it too quickly without keeping this as an intention. And so I've tried to do this over the years and do keep it as a priority in what we do.
And for anyone listening that hasn't already liked LALOOP on Instagram, I highly recommend that you go check out the brand. The photos are gorgeous, and also I think represent exactly what Elizabeth just shared, which is a broad constituency of all of the folks who enjoy and use the product in a way that's really authentic, again, to keep using that word, to the organization. So next up, this is a point we've already discussed a bit, but women, and this is a global statistic, are huge reinvestors, really indexing up to 90% of their income often into family and local community. So really, as we talk about economics of female leaders and women, entrepreneurs, that so much of that just gets put right back where it comes from, including through strategic philanthropy and strategic impact investment. We see again that when women are part of leadership decision making, that giving goes back and gets contributed strategically, locally, in a targeted way. And just to wrap it up, and we already have a question. Thank you, Manuel. We'll answer it first. For all of this layering and all of this goodness, there's a business value, and Elizabeth shared. There is talent acquisition, customer loyalty, investors. I can't tell you how many meetings I've sat in with banks. I think that's only going to get more important now as we're seeing a constriction in the market, for people to be lending to organizations that are values aligned, and that they can go back and share their portfolios and say, look, we made investments and we did well on the P&L side, and we're also doing good on the community side. So talent acquisition, we already have here Gen Zs and millennials as a note. This is the perfect point to go to Q&A. Our first question is from Manuel Vexler. Elizabeth, do you get different responses from Gen Z versus other generations when you're talking about giving back, sustainability, and how you engage in this work? Like, do you see a generational difference in the responses?
I do. And, it's helpful to have children in their 20s to be able to, keep the conversation going and it be real around the dinner table, in terms of what's important and what matters. And I think that, there's just such an opportunity, for engagement now more than ever, with sort of the next generation, the current generation, the younger generation, because and I see it in my nonprofit board work, of just, people care deeply, and it's no longer like I have to, it's uh, I'm showing up and I care, and like, what can I do? And I feel like, we have an opportunity, and as a company, it's exciting because it makes it easier to get engagement from your customer base.
100%. We have one more question, and we'll make this one our last. Do you think social impact will continue to grow in importance?
I do. And I think that's exciting. We see this in our grant program that we started 3 years ago. Every year we've gotten more engagement. And, our grant program is such that we, invite our customers, suppliers, everybody who touches LALOOP, to nominate a nonprofit that they deem to be important in their community and doing important work. And every November, we award 5 winners with a Loop-in grant. And this past November, we got more nominations than ever before. It just keeps increasing. And I think people are, realizing that just by nominating somebody, they can make a difference in their community. And so I'm super excited to see more engagement.
Awesome. I'll, second that and just say one of the things that I think is going to make sure that social impact increases, is that people are really awakening to this idea that you can create impact and value across so many places in your business. Yes, philanthropy. And also, as we've discussed today, yes, supply chain, yes, talent, yes, marketing, yes, R&D. And I think the more that we clarify that social impact can live in so many places in the business, as we see women leaders proving the point of time and time again, the more social impact not only will be embedded, but will grow, because as business grows, inherently this work will grow as well. So with that, thank you so much for being such an incredible leader and showing the way for so many of us on what it looks like to weave so elegantly this work and so powerfully and impactfully this work into your brand. I appreciate you spending the power half hour with us, and we'll keep watching how LALOOP loops in.
Thank you so much, Emily. It's such a pleasure. Thank you for everything you do in making it so easy to do this work. It's just an absolute pleasure.